PhD in computer science at University of Illinois, Chicago in 2023. Her work is in web security, web authentication, online privacy. So obviously she studies web's threat landscape and developing of countermeasures to protect user privacy. Lately, she's been working on online tracking techniques and pitfalls and authentication mechanisms. And she'll be talking today, obviously, about web security and privacy. So Shu, go ahead. We've got about 25 plus people in the room, and hopefully you can see us. There'll be a Q&A period afterwards. And so you could go about 50 minutes or so, and then we'll have some Q&A. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction. Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you all for being here today. I'm going to talk about a topic that affects all of us, often without us even realizing it, and that's web browser fingerprinting. Okay. So I will be sharing both technical insights and real-world implications. So don't worry if you are not very familiar with browser internals. I will keep the examples practical. Okay, let's go. Let's get started. So what is web tracking? When we browse the internet, we are moving across different websites, but behind the scenes, there are entities slyly watching where we go. So web tracking is the practice of monitoring and recording your online activities. And this includes what websites you visit, what links you click, what device you are using, and even what kind of browser or screen resolution you have. So some tracking is straightforward, but some are more hidden, more persistent, and much harder to avoid. So now you might be wondering, why does tracking even exist? What is the motivation behind it? Let me show you something familiar. So I was browsing a shopping website and I wanted to buy some shoes. And a few minutes later, I visited a completely unrelated site, a news website. And suddenly, those shoes I was viewing showed up here. It's like they are following me around the internet. So what's going on here? This is a classic example of targeting advertising. So when you visit a shopping website, it often tags your browser with trackers. Then as you browse the web, those tags let advertising networks recognize you and serve you relevant ads. Like the shoes I didn't buy yet. So from the business side, tracking helps companies understand users and sell those ads. And from our side, it can feel invasive. It's like someone is watching over your shoulder as you surf the web. Okay. So how does it work? Let's start by looking at the classic way websites track users, which is cookies. So cookies are tiny pieces of data that websites store in your browser. When you visit a website, it gives your browser an ID. It's basically a label says, hey, this is user 1234. Then the next time you come back, your browser sends the ID back to the website. And that's how the website knows you have been there before. That's how the website remember what items you put in your shopping cart or whether you are logging in. So this kind of tracking is called stateful tracking. The website relies on the data stored on your device to recognize you. So you have probably seen this pop-up asking you to accept cookies or reject all. That's because cookies are visible. You can actually clear them, delete them, block them, or reject them on the website. So this makes them less reliable for long-term tracking. And today, more and more users are deleting their cookies. More and more users become more privacy cautious, and more browsers are limiting them, especially when you browse using a private mode. So as a result, websites and advertisers have started looking for some other more sneaky ways to track people. Okay. Let's take a moment to really think about that. If you reject all cookies and you clear your browser data and you use private mode, do websites still know who you are? So the answer is yes. Even without traditional tracking tools like cookies, websites are finding new ways to recognize you. They don't rely on anything stored on your device, and that is browser fingerprinting. Okay. So, what is browser fingerprinting? When you visit a website, the website collects information about your machine, your browser, for the purpose of identifying it. So, your browser leaks a lot of details about the device you are using. Things like your screen resolution, your time zone, system language, your graphic hardware. So when combine all these pieces of information, it can be something very unique. And this is browser fingerprint. And any website can collect this data using JavaScript APIs. They don't need special permission. They don't need you to click anything. It's silent, it's at the background, it's passive, and it's increasingly used in the wild. Okay, so let's look at how browser fingerprinting works. Let's say you're visiting a website, and the website runs some fingerprinting scripts in your browser. And these scripts use JavaScript to ask your browser a bunch of questions like, what is your time zone? What is your screen resolution? What is your device platform? The request headers, your browser type, um, the what fonts your system have installed. And canvas fingerprint is another fingerprinting browser fingerprinting technique. It basically asks your browser to render an image like this one, and the rendering process depends on the device hardware and software. So if you use different device, even you cannot see the difference, but it actually produces some subtle device-specific differences. And those differences can then be turned into a unique ID. Okay. And WebGL is another technique. It's similar to Canvas, but this time you will ask your browser to render a 3D graphics. So this information might seem harmless on their own, but when you put them all together, they form a very unique fingerprint. And all these fingerprint is sent to a server. So in step 4, the server collects your fingerprints and they try to match it against a database of no fingerprints to identify you. Or it just stores the fingerprint as a new entry and starts tracking you from that point on. And remember, there are no pop-ups, no notification, no alert, no permission ask. This all happens slightly in the background while the page loads. So this is what makes fingerprinting powerful and also concerning. Let's look at a simplified example. This said, we have a website and our website has a million web users. And we want to identify a specific user here. So what we learn is this user use Mac OS system. So the user is within this circle. And the user use Chrome browser, so within this circle. And we learned the user's screen resolution is this number, and then fall into this circle and continue. We know that the users support 218 fonts in the system, and the user has this canvas value. Okay, so now we can identify this specific user. So if you're just in one of these circles, you are part of a large group. But the moment you are in the intersection of multiple circles, you become very unique. And this tiny red dot in the middle, that's you. You are the only person in a data set of a million users who happens to have the exact combination of browser properties. Okay, so this is how browser fingerprinting works. So even though none of these features are secret, like the system, the browser, the screen resolution, if you just look at them individually, they are not secret. But together, they can be something highly identifying. And this is the power of browser fingerprint. So it doesn't need anything private to work. It just needs enough of the right public details combined in the right way. Okay. So browser fingerprint is a double-edged sword. First, let's talk about how it can actually be used for good, particularly in security. So one example is bot detection. Many websites, especially those handling payments or login requests, they use fingerprinting to distinguish real users from bots. And another use case is authentication. Suppose someone has your username and password and try to log in your account from a totally different browser fingerprint, maybe from a different operating system, different graphic card, different GPU, and the browser fingerprint is completely different. And this can be served as a red flag. So some platforms use this signal to trigger additional verification steps or block suspicious logins altogether. Okay, so Let's connect fingerprinting to something we have probably experienced, two-factor authentication or 2FA. So we all know that 2FA can make accounts more secure because it requires additional verification, not just your username and password, but it also adds friction. If every time we want to access our account, we put our credential and then we have to take our phone, wait for the code, and type it, it's not always convenient. There's where risk-based authentication comes in. So instead of asking for 2FA every time, many websites try to be smart about it. They only trigger 2FA if the login seems suspicious. So what makes a login suspicious? That's where fingerprinting comes in. If you are logging from your usual browser, on your usual device, from your usual location, no problem. The system may just let you access your account after password, especially if you have checked remember this device. But if the fingerprint suddenly change, if someone on a different machine with a different resolution, with a different language, um, the fingerprint is different, and the system will trigger it as risky and asking for extra verification. So in a way, your browser fingerprint becomes a signal of risk. Let's see how this kind of authentication system works. So we have a user visit a website. This website can be a banking website, can be a email provider, can be social media. Okay, so the user visit the website and the website sends the fingerprinting script, and the fingerprinting script runs in the user's browser to collect the user's device fingerprints. So the user sent credentials, username, password, and the user's device fingerprint also sent to the server. So the server will compare the fingerprint with the previous legitimate login of with the user's profile at the server side. And if these two fingerprints do not match, the server trigger this login attempt is suspicious and trigger this 2FA change, ask you to verify a code sent to your mobile. And if these two fingerprint match, there is no 2FA, the user can directly access the account. So even though the login credentials are correct, the system is also checking, does this look like the same device and environment the user normally logs in from? So here, the browser fingerprint acts an invisible layer of protection. Okay. Okay, so now is a really important point and a potential vulnerability in risk-based authentication systems that rely on fingerprint. So let's set the top user here is a legitimate account owner, and they have login from their usual browser and device, and their fingerprint matches what the system is best. So no surprise, they can directly access their account after username and password. But here is the question: what if an attacker here, this attacker has the user credential, and attacker try to access the user account. And of course, attacker's fingerprint doesn't match the the account owner's fingerprint. So you will be the 2FA will be present and attacker cannot access the account. But what if this attacker is able to mimic this fingerprint? And if attacker can spoof the fingerprint, faking it, then the system might believe it's a real user. And in that case, the attacker could potentially bypass 2FA, just simply make them look familiar to the to the system. Okay. So we demonstrate this attack, and this is the attack workflow we have been published. This attack has three phases, and we developed two extensions to automate this attack. So in the first phase, the attacker investigates the target website to learn what fingerprint features the target website is collecting. And then the second phase, attacker will trick a user, the victim, to visit a phishing website. And the third phase, attacker will perform this attack on the target website. So let's look at this phase in detail. So in the first phase, attacker try to learn the target website. So attacker can use this fingerprint extractor extension to make things easier. So attacker visit the target website, and in this step, attacker doesn't need to do anything. The attacker doesn't need to put a credential. Attacker just simply use the extension to learn what fingerprinting attributes this target website collecting. So the extension will automatically replicate the exact fingerprinting process of target websites. So this is the first step. Okay. So the second step, attacker will build a phishing website. So attacker used the fingerprinting code they collected from the previous phase and built the phishing website, incorporate all these fingerprinting scripts. So attacker can trick this user to visiting their phishing website, and the user put their credential, and user also their browser will send the device fingerprint to the attacker. So after this step, attacker has the user's password, and attacker also has the fingerprints of the user. Okay, so the last step, attacker is ready to perform this attack. So attacker gonna spoof the fingerprint here. So we will use fingerprint spoofer extension here. So attacker visit the target website, and target website try to collect the user's fingerprints. So attacker put the credential, and attacker using their own device, which is different from the user's device. So the fingerprint will be different. That will trigger the system's 2FA. So at this step, attacker replace their fingerprint with the user's fingerprint that attacker attempt from the last step. Okay, so the system verifies the fingerprint, and the system found these two fingerprints match. So this is the system believes this is a legitimate user, and there's no 2FA. trigger. So attacker can access the systems, the user's account directly. Okay. So this is the attack. And what about the real world? So do real world websites actually use fingerprint as part of the login flow? And if so, can attackers really use spoof fingerprints to bypass protections in practice? Is the attack we just demonstrated, is that can we perform the attack in real world, or it was just in theory? Okay. So we tested 14 websites, and these 14 websites popular websites. Most of them, a lot of them are financial institutions. So basically, we have two devices, and the first device, we log in these systems like a regular user, and the second device, we use it as a attacker's device. And we try to log in, access those systems, the user account using attacker's device and see if we can bypass 2FA. So we're testing using our personal account. And we found that we can bypass 9 out of 14 websites. So we can spoof all of the fingerprints on this system, on these target websites. And the only reason that we cannot bypass some of the websites because they have the straight IP check. And even they have IP check, if they just require like the same city, or it doesn't require like the exact match, we can bypass some of it by editing the header. So this attack is feasible in the real world. Okay. So what can we actually do to prevent this? For websites, always trigger 2FA, but this is not user-friendly. It adds friction. And some researchers have proposed chaining sections using canvas elements from past visits. But this has its own limitations and potential vulnerabilities. And websites can use straight IP checks and validate that specific cookies are present. So the idea is don't rely on just a fingerprint. The website can combine fingerprint with other signals like cookies, geolocation, user behavior. So no single factor becomes a point of failure. And for users, we can always enable 2FA. It's not friendly, it's not convenient, but it's the best line of defense. And we want to use strong second factors like authenticator apps, or instead of just the SMS codes. And we can use password managers to avoid reusing password across sites. Because many account takeover attacks start with credential reuse. And finally, if you are privacy cautious, you can use anti-fingerprinting browsers or extensions. They're not perfect, but they can reduce your exposure. So let's talk about the other edge of browser fingerprint. So while browser fingerprint can help protect accounts, It can also be used to track users silently without their knowledge or consent. So this is online tracking. When we visit website, the tracker use JavaScript to collect your device information and generate a fingerprint to identify you across different websites. But one thing here is this technique heavily relies on JavaScript. So popular browsers have recently adopted a series of defensive countermeasures that mitigate browser fingerprinting by blocking some certain API calls. So they report fake values, they report some very generic values. So the tracker cannot identify this user. And they can also entirely or partially disable JavaScript. And the tracker cannot identify a user because the tracker cannot collect any fingerprint. Okay. So here is the question. As a tracker's perspective, we might think, is fingerprinting possible without JavaScript? Because most of the defensive countermeasures we learned, they try to manipulate, modify JavaScript to defend against these tracking techniques. So can we fingerprint without JavaScript? Then that means we can bypass these defenses. So we published a paper present a new fingerprinting approach. Instead of relying on JavaScript like traditional fingerprinting, we use styles, especially how different browsers render the same HTML page. So you might think that all browsers render things like chat boxes, drop-down menus, scroll bars the same way, but they don't. So each browser system introduce some subtle variations, and we catch these stylistic differences and use that to generate a browser fingerprint. So our approach doesn't use any JavaScript, and it provides highly discriminating fingerprints. So the tracker can still track the user without with all those defenses in place. So this idea is based on the observation that different devices render page elements differently. So if we look at these elements, they look different in different browsers. And sometimes it's usually hard to tell the differences with our own eyes. It's sufficient to fingerprint a device with all those subtle differences. So one challenge is even the user browser render these elements differently, but how can a website learn about those differences? Because we at the website at the server side we cannot see the user's screen. So how can we learn those stylistic differences? We use dimensions. Because all these elements, they have different dimensions. So if we can learn the dimensions, we know about the browser type, we know the user settings, we can learn the system language in this case. So certain HTML elements have different size depending on certain environmental factors. and we have a variety of elements, then we can invert much more many device characteristics. So we ended up using 339 fingerprinting elements. And from their dimensions, we can learn all this information about the user device, the browser, the platform, supportive phones, the presence of ad blocker, screen resolution, and all of this. Some of the attributes are existing in traditional fingerprinting, and some are newly introduced by our system. Okay. So you might be wondering, how do we actually implement this fingerprinting system? This is the fingerprinting page looks like. We have 25 iframes on the page, and remember these are all invisible. So all these over 300 elements are placed in a main iframe. It's 800 by 1,000 iframe, and we do this because we want to make sure these dimensions consistent even when the users resize the browser window, it will not be affected. So this is how the page looks like, and we use iframes to run the elements dimensions. We arrange elements in this way that the iframes, like for example, the iframe 8, the iframes dimension depends on all of these elements dimension. And if we learn the iframe dimension, it basically tells us the elements dimension. Okay. So if a different device visits this page, the dimension change, and we can collect this dimension. Okay. So the fingerprinting process is a user visit this page, a device with a browser visit this page, and this iframe will automatically send the dimension to the server side. And from this dimension, we can generate a specific identifier, a fingerprint for this specific user. Okay. So that is a statistic fingerprint. And of course, there are many other tracking vectors. One of the example is browser extensions. Browser extensions are another powerful tracking vector because each user's combination of install extensions is often unique. And that can be used to make the user more identifiable. Okay. And another example is favcoms. The favcoms can be used to track users too. When you visit a website, your browser saves the favcoms to a spatial cache. What the researchers found here is that this favcom cache can be prop. So even you're visiting in incognito mode or private mode, it doesn't affect. The website can prop the cache behavior to infer a unique identifier for your session. Okay. So back then, the internet felt anonymous. You could browse freely and your identity was hidden by default. But today, with browser fingerprinting and other tracking techniques, websites can often recognize you instantly. This is the world we are navigating now, and it's why this conversation around fingerprinting, privacy, and authentication really matters. But the good news is there's a lot we can do about it, and better awareness is the first step. Okay. And thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, go ahead. I wanted to ask if it would be like feasible for a user to spoof their own fingerprint to keep their identity anonymous.
So your question is if it's possible for a user to spoof fingerprint.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, it's possible, and we actually published some demos to show this process. So fingerprints has like a basic fingerprints and advanced fingerprints, and the basic fingerprints, uh, there are a lot of like browser extensions tools you can easily spoof them, like user agent. I can easily modify my user agent. Uh, Even I'm using Chrome, I can modify the user agent to show that I'm using Firefox. And advanced fingerprint that something like Canvas fingerprint, WebGL fingerprint that we just talked about, it requires your browser to render an image. So if we want to spoof these advanced fingerprints, we have to visit the target website to collect the code, the image code, because if the images are different, then the fingerprinting values are different. So that's why when we talk about the attack, we need the first step to collect the target website's fingerprinting code in order to get all those advanced fingerprinting code, like what images uh, you are required to render in your browser. And then we need to trick the victim to visit our phishing website and learn uh, how the victim's device render this image and collect the data. And then that way we can spoof both basic fingerprints and advanced fingerprints. So um excuse me. So this right. So and also some like privacy focused extensions they randomize your fingerprints. So fingerprinting values are can be easily manipulated. So it's possible to spoof the fingerprints. Did I answer your question?
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a quick question. Is these digital fingerprints, are they considered personal information? And if so, how do these companies stay compliant with privacy laws such as California Privacy Act and GDPR?
So the thing is we talk about these fingerprints and all the information collected, they are not considered like private information. Like I want to know your browser type, I want to know your system. And sometimes it helps the website to deliver the custom content to your browser in order to better for a better user experience. So if you look at this this information individually, they are not private information. And they become sensitive only when we combine it. So there is no, and also JavaScript is a require for a lot of web features. So you cannot, like if you block JavaScript, if you block the website from collecting this information, it will break the website's functionality. So so there is no like a regulation to limit the collection of fingerprints because they are not considered private information if we just look at them individually.
are you studying anything about, phone calls? I'll get these phone calls. I'll make a phone call and immediately I'll get a call from that area code. And it's a scam. I report the scam and then I just get all the more phone calls, of that nature.
I'm sorry, so what was the question?
So, what do you know about, scammers who use phone information, cell phone information? So when I make a phone call in a certain area code, I will immediately get another call from that area code, and it's a scammer. I report the scam, and then I just get all the more scam phone calls from that entity. You know anything about that? How can I prevent it?
I think I have the same experience. Um, so, that is not relevant to browser fingerprint because what we're talking about here is from the lab layer. So we don't look at those scam phone calls. This is not the topic we discussed today, but yeah, I'm happy to discuss it with you offline if you're interested.
Okay, well, that's fine. It's a little bit off topic, but I thought you might do something about it.
I got time for another question or two if anyone has them. Yeah, otherwise, let's thank Dr. Lin for a great talk.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Lin.